Hi guys, it's me Chazza HD and welcome to a Practice 1 and Practice 2 review for the 2018 Singapore Grand Prix. And guys, how are we all doing? I haven't been live for almost 2 weeks now. And yeah, how are you guys doing after, of course, the last race in Italy? We are now done pretty much with the European season. And now we begin the flyaways to end the 2018 Formula 1 season. I cannot wait to get into qualifying in the race for Singapore. But right now, we are going to go through Practice 1 and Practice 2 here in Singapore. Now, if you have missed the results of both Practice 1 and Practice 2, let me show you them right now. Here is Practice 1. Daniel Ricciardo, fastest of all. Sorry there. Max Verstappen second. Sebastian Vettel third. Kimi Raikkonen 4th, Nico Hülkenberg in 5th, Lewis Hamilton 6th, Carlos Sainz in P7, Valtteri Bottas P8, Charles Leclerc in P9 and Romain Grosjean in P10. Sorry guys, I'm not used to live streaming for about 2 weeks now, so you're going to have to give me some time here. And here is the bottom 10, Marcus Ericsson P11, Sergio Perez in P12, Kevin Magnussen 13th, Alonso 14th, Ocon 15th, Gasly 16th, Hartley 17th, Stroll is 18th, Sirotkin 19th and Stoffel van Dorn in 20th. But guys, if you're unfamiliar with Singapore, basically Practice 1 is not representative at all because, of course, qualifying and the race takes place at night and Practice 1 takes place in the middle of the afternoon, which qualifying the race, of course, is not going to take place in. So Practice 1 and the results there don't really matter. But what does matter in terms of practice is Practice 2, which takes place around the same time as the race on Sunday. And here are the results from Practice 2. Kimi Raikkonen, fastest of all, from Lewis Hamilton second and Verstappen is third. Ricciardo 4th, Bottas 5th, Sainz very impressively in P6, then Grosjean 7th, Alonso 8th, Vettel 9th. We'll get on to why he was down in 9th in Practice 2, and then Nico Hülkenberg in 10th place. And then the bottom 10, you have Perez, Ericsson, Ocon, Leclerc, Magnussen, Van Dorn, Hartley, Gasly, Stroll and Sirotkin. So those are your Practice 1 and Practice 2 results. But first off, let's go through the top teams and kind of review how they did today in Friday practice. First off, Mercedes. They weren't actually as bad as I thought they would be. They're not, I wouldn't say they have the fastest car, but they're not miles off. They're definitely close enough to give, Ferrari, if they're the fastest, they're definitely, quick enough to be close enough to cause them, some trouble if they do make mistakes like the Italian Grand Prix. That's why Lewis Hamilton won at Monza, because, they didn't have the fastest car, but they were close enough to force a mistake from Ferrari. And it looks as though here in Singapore, it's kind of a similar situation. They're not the fastest, but they're close enough to cause some kind of mistake if there is one, and there normally is one, from Ferrari. But I wouldn't say the car looks totally comfortable. Valtteri Bottas had quite a lot of moments. He spun in Practice 1, had a couple of other off-track moments. Hamilton had a couple of his own. So the car is not totally comfortable to drive, but once they get, that lap hooked up, I think the Mercedes is a lot quicker than we expected it to. I really think it is. And they really could cause a surprise, I think, in qualifying. And maybe the race as well. We'll have to see once we get to Sunday. Next up is Ferrari. Now, I do think Ferrari have the fastest car. They did not finish fastest in Practice 1. They were fastest in Practice 2, but Sebastian Vettel was all the way down in P9. We'll get onto him in a moment. Kimi Raikkonen fastest in Practice 2 and had a very good Friday practice day. Of course, has now, he's now learnt the news that he's going to Sauber for 2019. But he looks very good and he looks very determined still. He doesn't look like his motivation has dropped since the news that he's not going to be at Ferrari for 2019. So looking good there for Kimi, but for Sebastian Vettel, it's not looking great. It's not looking great. I don't think his weekend is completely destroyed, by the mistake he made in practice 2, where pretty much as he came to the end of the lap, he touched the wall quite hard and damaged his car. I believe he damaged maybe the radiator on his car, and that meant that he could not go for a serious qualifying run and missed pretty much all of the race running. That is, at the very least, going to have a small effect on Sebastian's weekend in terms of a bad way. It definitely will, because once we get to the race, he will not have the, not necessarily the know-how, but he won't have that data to know how fast he is going to be in that Ferrari car in, you know, these conditions, you know, with these cars. He's not going to know as much as Kimi Raikkonen. So, yeah, that's not good for Sebastian. I think when it comes to qualifying, he can still pull out the bag. But when it comes to the race, I think him missing the race running in practice 2, it's going to have an effect in the race. I definitely think it will be having an effect for Sebastian. And then we go on to Red Bull, who are about as quick as I thought they would be. They're not miles off Ferrari and Mercedes, but I think once we get to qualifying, they will be third fastest. I don't see them being anywhere closer or, you know, in that top 4. I don't see it. I just do not see it. They don't have the engine power to compete with Mercedes and Ferrari. The Renault in a straight line in terms of its power unit is so slow that even now at tracks that suit the Red Bull car like Singapore does, and it absolutely does, Red Bull just cannot maintain any kind of advantage over Mercedes and Ferrari because there is such a gap in engine power. It's such a shame for Red Bull, because if they had a much better power unit in terms of it being maybe 3 or 4 tenths closer to Ferrari, I think Red Bull could be on for a pole position and a race win this weekend. But because they're so far off with the power unit, I don't see how they're going to get pole when it comes to qualifying, and I don't see how they're going to seriously compete for a race win, but I think they can compete for a podium. But guys, what do you think of Mercedes? Do you think they're better than you expected? Do you think they're closer to maybe getting a race win on Sunday? Do you think Ferrari have the fastest car? And do you think Vettel's incident in FP2 will have some kind of effect on what happens in the race on Sunday? Of course, with him missing the race running in practice 2. And for Red Bull, do you think they can do anything better than 5th and 6th in qualifying? Do you think they'll be on the second row of one of their cars? Where do you think the 2 Red Bulls will be? Let me see what you guys are saying about those top 3 teams. This is the news I don't want to hear. That's from Niblo. Good to see him in the chat. Tonka Toy Truck. I traded Verstappen. I traded Verstappen for Vettel this week. We'll have to see if that comes out. If that comes out well, because if Vettel performs how he normally does at Singapore, excluding last year, of course, then he should be getting the win this weekend. The Ferrari car does look very, very good, despite his mistake in practice 2. Ben McCarthy, Mercedes were not awful at Monaco, so I'm not surprised, but that's not in enough detail. They weren't, at Monaco, they weren't as bad as they thought they'd be there, but they still did not have enough of a car to win that race. I still think out of the top 3, they had the worst car out of the top 3. It wasn't by miles like it was, say, in 2017 at Monaco and Singapore in the dry and normal conditions. But, yeah, they were better at Monaco and they look better here in Singapore than expected. But I still don't think they have enough on pace to, get a pole position or a race when they need some kind of mistakes or maybe some luck to get that. I think that says Tronas, 4th and 5th for Red Bulls. Yeah, I think that's the best they could probably get in qualifying. I think that's the best they could do. Maybe get ahead of Valtteri Bottas or Vettel if he makes another mistake. We'll have to see in qualifying. JB, Mercedes will be close, but Red Bull and Ferrari will be faster. That's interesting. I'm interested to hear that you think that Red Bull will still be faster. That's interesting, because normally Mercedes and Ferrari turn it up massively compared to Red Bull on a Saturday, and Hamilton was ahead of both Red Bulls in practice too. So yeah, I still don't see how Red Bull can finish ahead of both Mercedes and Ferraris right now. I don't see it. Stella, Mercedes is not on the speed. Yeah, in terms of winning the race, no, but they are looking better than I think people expected, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing, because if you asked me a few months ago, coming to Singapore, where Mercedes would be, I would have said they are going to be so far off, they're going to have no chance of winning the race. But with what has transpired in the last couple months, that, you know, their chances do look better. Ben McCarthy, Singapore is a perfect place for strategy. It will be like LMP1, Hamilton and Vettel, then Bottas and Raikkonen. Blocking number one for from other team. Yeah, probably. We'll have to see, though, where Bottas and Raikkonen are in the race and what positions they are in. Simon Craglan, Red Bull will be quickest in the race, most likely, but if they're stuck in traffic, is there anything they can do about that? Not really. There's nothing they can really do with that good pace, you know, in the race if they're stuck behind 3 or 4 cars. So qualifying is very, very important for Red Bull. They have to try and get onto the second row. If they don't, then I don't see how they can get a race win unless there is a craziness at the start of the race. And Ben McCarthy saying there, will it rain? I have seen a forecast that it might rain on Sunday. Maybe that's what Red Bull need for a race win. But as we saw last year, Lewis Hamilton was great in the rain compared to Daniel Ricciardo and the Red Bull right behind. So it's tricky with Red Bull. It's really tricky to say where they're going to be. Simon Craglan, Daniel Ricciardo is so good at street tracks. Yep, I agree. Singapore is a very good track for Daniel Ricciardo. And as JB says, rain is bad for me as a Vettel fan. If you're a Vettel fan, you must be praying for a normal dry race. But now we'll go on to the midfield teams, guys. First off, McLaren. They're not looking as bad as I thought they would be. Stoffel Van Dorn, as you see on the screen there, he was in P16 or P15. That's quite a lot higher than normally he is in a practice 2 session. So that does show that the McLaren this weekend is way better than it was at Monza and also at Spa. And Alonso was up in 8th place. So could we say that McLaren could get a car into Q3? Maybe. With Alonso, we know what he's like in terms of producing amazing performances in cars that are not good. But it's difficult to say. It's really difficult to say because there are a lot of teams and a lot of drivers in there that are looking quick. So it's going to be a tough job for McLaren to try and get into Q3. But hopefully they just perform well this weekend and score some kind of points, because at Spa and Monza they were so poor. Next up, we'll go on to Renault. And I have to say, Renault have the best of the rest car this weekend. I think that's quite clear to say that. In practice 1, they were 5th and 7th. And in practice 2, they were 6th and 10th. Renault do have the best car in the midfield. And it's not really a surprise because this track suits what the Renault car is about. It really does. It's about having great aerodynamics and just, you know, great grip. That's what you need around this track. You need grip. You don't need that, you know, straight line speed that a Haas and a Force India is very good at. You need aerodynamic grip. That's what the Renault has, and that's what the Haas and the Force India don't quite have as much as the Renault, and that's why Renault, for example, struggled so much at the Belgian and Italian Grand Prix, and that's why Renault, this weekend, I think pretty clearly are best of the rest. And if they don't finish up, say at least 7th and 9th, I'd be very surprised. I'd be very surprised because this weekend, their car does look very good. But again, it is not exactly a massive surprise. And moving on to Force India, who are not as quick as I thought they would be. They're not miles off where I thought they would be. But so far, the upgrades, I'd say, are not quite working. But of course, in qualifying, they could, prove me and prove everyone wrong and be very, very good. We'll have to see once we get to qualifying. But yeah, they just don't look as good as I thought they would be. I thought they would have a car, at least in both sessions, in the top 10. But it just didn't come off for them. They don't have the grip of the Renault. And it seems as well of the Haas around this track. But of course, it's only practice, and in qualifying, things can change. But guys, for those three teams, for McLaren first, do you think McLaren can get a car into Q3 with Fernando Alonso? Do you think Renault has the best car in the midfield? I think they do. Do you think the same? And for Force India, do you think in qualifying they can also, like McLaren, get a car or maybe both cars into Q3? Let's see what some of you guys think of those three teams. Simon Cragland, in this season, Force India has only been good at power circuits, despite Monaco, where they were actually pretty good. That's the thing. At Monaco, as you said, they were very, very good. And that's kind of playing a part in my prediction coming into the weekend as to why I thought they were going to be pretty good. But it doesn't seem to be coming off. It really doesn't. So, yeah, we'll have to see again in qualifying whether they're sandbagging or they just haven't quite got up to speed yet. We'll have to see once we get to qualifying. Ben McCarthy, McLaren won't be in Q3, but Nando will score a point. Given what McLaren have been like this season, yeah, that's very likely because, as we know, their race performances are better than their qualifying performances. Qualifying has been a very weak point for McLaren. Simon Craglan, you can never write off Alonso, indeed. JB, I feel Gasly can give a good result like Hungary and Bahrain. We'll get on to Toro Rosso in a moment. They really were not that quick. I don't know why, but again, we'll get on to them in a moment. Stella says McLaren can get P11 maximum for Renault. This the chance to get away from Haas in the Constructors. Force India can make an upset and get a top 5 finish. If we have, again, a crazy race like last year, maybe they need things to go right. They have to make sure that they aren't a part of that craziness and don't crash out on a first lap or in a massive crash and avoid any kind of incidents. And maybe Force India can do that. But again, we need a crazy race. I can't see who asked that question or made that statement, but he says, I think Force India going to be out in Q2. Right now, it looks very plausible that they are going to go out in Q2. It looks very likely, but we might see something surprising tomorrow. We'll have to see once we get to qualifying. Tonka Toy Truck, Haas will ruin Renault and Force India's plans this weekend. I don't think Haas will ruin Renault's plans, but I think they will ruin Force India's. I think Haas have a better car than the Force India, but again, we'll get on to Haas in a moment. If there's a safety car, that's going to change everything, especially if it's in a pit stop window. That's from Stella. That's a great point. If it's a pit stop window and a safety car comes out, then it does massively change things around. Just think back to 2008 when the safety car came out because, as we know now, of a deliberate crash by Nelson Piquet Jr., it can massively change around a race. So yeah, it really could again. Tonka Toy Truck, I think he's answering someone else there, saying, yep, they are pulling the old Ferrari tactics. Let me just find Simon Craglan's question. Oh, there it is. Renault probably best of the rest, but Haas did sandbag in Spa in the practice sessions. Yeah, I see your point. But I just don't think Haas have the grip of the Renault around this track. I don't think they do. I really don't think they do. JB, do you think Haas or Force India is faster this weekend? I don't know whether to have Grosjean or Esteban Ocon as my turbo driver. For your turbo driver, I would probably go Grosjean because I think the Haas is better this weekend. It's still close, but I think the Haas is the better car. But guys, we will now go on to the last few midfield teams. First off, Williams. They are so slow, there is no point talking about them. Toro Rosso, very disappointing. Very disappointing. Coming into this weekend, and I said this in my Singapore Grand Prix preview, which by the way, if you have not checked out, it's down below in the description. I thought they would be a dark horse for this weekend. I thought they would be at least on the edges of the top 10, maybe getting, say, Gasly into the top 10 in both practice 1 and practice 2. But they just haven't been quick. I don't know why. I think in practice 1 they were 15th and 16th, and then in practice 2 they were 17th and 18th. No idea why Toro Rosso are so slow. This track is very good for them. Very good for them. I think Carlos Sainz for Toro Rosso last season finished in 4th, I think. It's a very good track for Toro Rosso. Historically, a very good one. So I don't understand why Toro Rosso just have no pace. They look like, at the moment, even slower than McLaren and Sauber, who I thought would definitely be behind Toro Rosso. It's just, for me, a massive surprise. I didn't see that coming, but hopefully this is maybe just them sandbagging. I don't know. Maybe they haven't brought as many upgrades as Renault, Haas and Force India this weekend. That might be a factor. We'll have to see in qualifying where they end up, and if it's true that they just don't have any pace here in Singapore. Next up is Haas. Now in practice 1 they weren't really that quick at all, but in practice 2, which is way more representative, Romain Grosjean up in P8. That's about the area, you know, Haas should be in. I don't think Grosjean really could have done any better than that. So I think, yeah, he looks very... Oh, sorry, he wasn't P8, he was P7, sorry. P7. Romain Grosjean, P7. That's about the area I think he can be in. I don't think he can be any better than that. I don't think Haas will be able to get one of their cars ahead of both Renaults. I just don't see it. I think the Renault is too fast. But for Haas, if both drivers get the best out of the car, they should be getting both cars into Q3 and lining up at least 9th and 10th and then try and beat Renault in the race. But they can definitely split the Renaults, as we saw in practice 2. So Haas are looking good, but I want to see more. I want to see more of their pace, because we just need to see how they do up against teams like Force India and also this team, Sauber, who are looking actually quite quick. They're looking a lot quicker than I thought they would be. Practice 2, they were up in 12th and 14th. That's a lot better than I thought they were going to be. But the car isn't looking settled. It's not looking easy to drive. Marcus Ericsson having a spin, as you can see on your screen, having a spin in practice 2, and Charles Leclerc quite badly breaking his car in practice 1. So the Sauber car is not looking that great in terms of grip, but once, it's kind of like Mercedes. The car is not staying on track a lot, but once they get the lap hooked up, the pace is there. The pace is definitely there. So Sauber, maybe they're the dark horse this weekend. I don't know, but it's kind of strange to me, because at Spa and Monza, where we all thought they were going to be quick, they were not. But here, they're actually looking better than they were at tracks where they should have been quick. It's quite confusing. I don't understand why, but we'll see in qualifying whether they can maintain that. But guys, for those 4 teams, do you think Williams can do anything other than be on the back row of the grid? For Toro Rosso, Are you surprised that they're so slow right now? So far after practice 1 and practice 2. For Haas, do you think they can get a car either in between the two Renaults or maybe one of their cars or both their cars ahead of the two Renaults? And for Sauber, are you surprised by their pace or did you see this coming? And where do you think Sauber will end up once we get to qualifying? Let me see what some of you guys are saying in the chat. K-Mag is always sandbagging in practice. That's from Simon Cragland. I have noticed that with Magnussen is in practice he doesn't really tend to do anything spectacular in terms of pace. He doesn't really show that much, but once we get to qualifying, he pulls out the bag. It kind of reminds me of the days where Daniel Ricciardo was at Toro Rosso. Back in those days, on Friday, he would be nowhere. But once we got to Saturday and to qualifying, suddenly he would have all of this pace that no one saw coming. It's kind of the same with Kevin Magnussen. So maybe that is what he is doing. JB, if Haas don't get into Q3, it will be a disaster. Oh my, that's a bad one. That's a bad one. That's from JB. And let me read out some more. Simon Cragland, Sauber must run some weird programs because they are often quick in practice, but in qualifying they often fall behind. Yeah, it's Spa and Monza, they looked actually quite quick in practice, but once we got to, when it mattered in qualifying, there was nothing there. There was nothing there, especially at Monza. They were so poor in qualifying there. So, yeah, it's quite strange. It is very, very strange. Let me see more. Let's see if there's any more questions or statements. Simon Cragland, it's a strength, I reckon, talking about K-Mag. Is he deliberately doing that, though? Or is that the team doing that? That's what I mean. I don't know if that's just him deliberately not pushing it in certain corners, knowing he has a lot more to give. I don't know. I don't know. So, yeah, we'll have to see in qualifying if he's not 15th like he was in practice 2 or practice 1 and see if he's up in 9th or 10th. We'll have to see once we get to qualifying. Stella, Williams are what we expected. Toro Rosso are most likely sandbagging. I hope so, because I thought they were going to be very quick this weekend. Haas has a new fancy floor, and Grosjean looks on the pace. Sauber are looking to get both cars into Q3 for the first time in how long? I can't remember. I actually can't remember how long it's been. I think it was 2012 the last time Sauber got both cars into Q3. I think Suzuka 2012 or Suzuka 2013, something like that. I know it was definitely either 2012 or 2013. It couldn't have been 2015. They weren't bad in 2015, but they weren't that quick. But yeah, it's been at least 5 years since they've got into Q3. Q2, you dummy. I'm sure they've got both cars into Q2, but I've seen a quote from Simone Resta saying that they want to get both cars into Q3 at every race between now and the end of the season, which is very, very ambitious. But so far, after the pace they've shown, maybe they can do so. But they should be able to get both cars into Q2. They should be able to. I think both Renaults, Juan Haas and Alonso will make the Q3. Pretty much the same as what we've seen in practice 2. We had both Renaults with a Haas and Fernando Alonso in the top 10. So, yeah, maybe. I still don't think McLaren will get a car into Q3. I think they'll be 12th or 13th because in qualifying they tend to drop back. Tonka Toy Truck, the only thing saving Hartley's bacon is the lack of super licenses. But there has been some news today which could maybe not threaten his seat, but could decide one of the seats at Toro Rosso for 2019. Pascal Wehrlein has been released from his Mercedes contract, meaning that there's no unwillingness from Red Bull's side to sign Wehrlein to Toro Rosso because there's no Mercedes deal or Mercedes contract there. So I think Toro Rosso, they should go for Wehrlein. They have to. Wehrlein, I've said this for so long, is such a good driver. Does deserve to be in F1. He proved it in the Manor and the Sauber last year. And if Toro Rosso have the chance to sign him, they have to. They have to. He is such a good young driver and has been, I wouldn't say proven, but has shown glimpses of him being a great talent for the future. So if Toro Rosso have the chance to sign him, they have to do so. They absolutely have to do so. Simon Cragland, I think Wehrlein is good, but he's also overrated in my opinion. I'd like to know why you think he's overrated. JB, will Ocon be dropped from Mercedes? Toto Wolff today said that 100% no, that he would not be leaving the Mercedes program, which I'm not sure is the best thing for Esteban Ocon, because I think in a similar way to Wehrlein, if Ocon was not tied to a Mercedes contract, Ocon probably could have been going to Toro Rosso for 2019, or maybe Haas or Renault before they went for Ricciardo. I think Mercedes right now, and I have to say, I just don't think that Mercedes know how to manage young drivers. I don't think they actually know how to, get them a seat and how to nurture their talent. I don't think they know how to. They've, right now, not fully ruined, but have semi-ruined Wehrlein and Ocon's career so far. Because Ocon, it looks like it's not going to be in F1 in 2019. Wehrlein missed out on a seat for 2018, and there's still not a great chance he's going to be in F1 in 2019. And then you have George Russell, who should be in F1 as well, who is kind of 50-50 for the Williams seat. They have three massively talented drivers, but it looks as though right now I'd have to say two of them are going to be out of F1 next season, and one of them is at best 50-50 for a seat. That's not good enough. That is not good enough. Mercedes should have bought Manor when they had the chance and made them a B team. If they did that, this would not be an issue. This would not be an issue. And I think Manor, if they were an actual Mercedes B team, they'd be quite a, I wouldn't say a massively competitive team, but they would be definitely lower midfield and would score points. I can guarantee you that. They were actually very good in 2016. So, yeah, Mercedes have made a lot of mistakes with their young drivers. But talking of young drivers, let's go through a piece of news that has happened this week. Charles Leclerc has been announced he's going to be joining Ferrari for 2019, replacing Kimi Raikkonen. And I have to say with Leclerc, maybe he's not ready. We'll have to see in 2019. But if you look at his performances in 2018 alone, he does deserve to step up, in my opinion, to a top team, because that Sauber car is not anywhere near as good as the results he's been getting with it. For example, P6 in Baku, that Sauber car was not good enough to get 6th. It was not good enough to get points in Spain. It was not good enough to get points in Canada. It was not good enough to be in Q3 in France and get points in France. I could keep going on. It maybe wasn't good enough to get points in Austria, even though Ericsson did get points. He has been very good this season. Very, very good. He has got so much performance out of what is, at the end of the day, not that great of a Sauber car. We've said that Sauber have been very good at improving during the season, But let's be honest, the Sauber still isn't one of the best midfield cars. It's still, I would say, on the lower end of the midfield. And he, sometimes in qualifying, has put it up there with Renault and Haas, who are at the front of that midfield battle. That just shows you how good he has been. So I think he does deserve to be at Ferrari for 2019. But I will say, I don't think Ferrari have picked Charles Leclerc because of what he has done in 2018. I think Ferrari always had the intention of picking him maybe for 2019 or 2020. I think they always had this thing in mind. But I think the reason they took this decision to put him in the car in 2019 and not 2020 is because Sebastian Vettel, you know, he's made all these mistakes. This is going to be, if he loses the championship again, the second consecutive season where he's had a great chance, Vettel, to win the title, and he's blown it 2 times in a row. And I think Ferrari know this, and they're now making it, I wouldn't say, well, maybe you could say uncomfortable for Vettel, but I think they're taking away Raikkonen, who is clearly his number 2 driver and his best friend probably in the paddock. They're taking him away because they don't want to keep Vettel in a comfortable zone when Vettel is not getting the job done. If Vettel this season was in the lead of the championship like he should be, Kimi Raikkonen would be at Ferrari for 2019. I don't have that much doubt about it, because why change what is clearly working if Vettel was leading the championship right now? But because he's 30 points behind and he's made mistakes, I think they're kind of turning up the pressure on Sebastian, saying, you know, if you don't get the job done this year and next year, then we'll just go with this new young kid, Charles Leclerc. I think they're turning the pressure up on him, and I fully agree with them doing that. I would do the same. They've done the right thing here, Ferrari. They've done absolutely the right thing. But guys, what do you think of this move? Do you think Charles Leclerc will work out at Ferrari? Do you think Leclerc can beat Vettel in 2019? Or do you think Vettel will still beat him next season? What do you think about Charles Leclerc going to Ferrari? John says Ferrari seem to have changed their philosophy on number 1 and number 2 drivers. I don't think they have. I think they're just kind of putting the pressure on Vettel in a kind of saying in a way, again, if you don't get the job done in 2018 and 2019, then we're just going to go with Leclerc. I think that's what they're doing, and I would do exactly the same, and I fully agree with what they are doing. Welsh Toast, Leclerc will beat Vettel in my opinion. Of course, the last time Vettel came up against a young superstar was 2014 against Daniel Ricciardo, and we all know what happened then. So, yeah, maybe that will happen. Stella, I hope they will not make Leclerc a number 2 driver. Pray to the F1 gods and Arriva Bene. I don't think they are going to make him a number 2 driver. I don't think that's the intention. I think the intention, again, is to put pressure on Sebastian by having someone next to him that could easily do his job better, possibly. We'll have to see. Vettel can't handle pressure. I agree. There's probably people in the chat who disagree, but I agree with that. He's proven many times that he cannot handle the pressure. That's why he is not a 5-time champion, and that's why he's probably not going to win his 5th title this season. JB, will Leclerc win a race next year? Also, what about Gasly winning a race next season? Leclerc will definitely win a race, no doubt about it. Gasly, it will depend on how fast his car is. If the Red Bull car is a lot closer to Mercedes and Ferrari, or close enough, then I think maybe he can. But if it's comfortably way off, then I don't see how Gasly can get a win. Because I don't think, no disrespect to Gasly, but I just don't think he is as good as Max Verstappen next to him, who could steal a race win despite the car not being as good as the Mercedes or the Ferrari. John, any year he beats Vettel, Vettel will be gone. If Vettel next year blows the championship and Hamilton or Leclerc win it in 2019, then I wouldn't be surprised if Ferrari made Leclerc the #1 driver, or at least made it absolutely equal between the two. I wouldn't be surprised. And if that did happen, then you shouldn't be surprised if Sebastian ended up leaving Ferrari in 2022, something like that. I think that could feasibly happen. Stella says Leclerc is going to be top 3 in the Drivers' Championship. Leclerc will not disappoint. I hope he doesn't. Hopefully he is ready. I think, this is from Simon Cragland, I think Leclerc will act as a #2 driver next year, but in 2020 Leclerc will probably beat Vettel. I don't think he'll want to act like a #2 next season. I think next season will kind of be like 2007 with Alonso and Hamilton. Instead, replace Hamilton with Leclerc and Alonso with Vettel, where I think in 2007, or at least at the start of that season, Alonso thought, this guy's quick, but he won't beat me, and he's probably going to be the #2 eventually at the end of the season. But then Hamilton was so determined and so fast, he made it so that it was now his team, not Fernando's, and I think something very similar could play out again. And that's another thing. If Vettel and Leclerc have equal status and Vettel bottles it even more because he has even more pressure on him, that could lead to another Hamilton and Mercedes championship. So Ferrari do have to be careful next year with the racing between their two drivers, I think. But we'll move on from that news and go on to the other news, that Kimi Raikkonen is going to Sauber, back to where it all started back in 2001. And I think this is a good move because, as we've seen this season, Sauber are making massive progress. And I've seen people saying, is there any point for Kimi to continue because he's going to be racing at the back? Well, he's not going to be racing at the back. The Sauber has been proven this season to be good enough to get points probably in half the races on the calendar. And with Kimi Raikkonen, if he performs like he has this season and gets back towards what is his best, he can still score points, he can still have good results. I don't think winning races and championships really matters to Kimi. If it did, he would have retired by now. He would have retired at the end of this season, but I don't think Kimi cares. All Kimi wants to do is drive a race car fast. He does not care about anything else. And that's why he is going to be at Sauber for 2019 and 2020. And if it goes well at Sauber, I wouldn't be surprised if he raced in 2021. I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. Because, again, all Kimi wants to do is drive a race car fast. He doesn't care about any other circumstances when it comes to how old he is, and his pace, and how slow or fast the car is. He does not care. All he cares about is driving cars. That's it. So I think Kimi's going to have fun at Sauber. He's definitely going to have the #1 status. Who will be his teammate? I don't know. It looks as though it's between Giovinazzi and Marcus Ericsson. I would go with Ericsson because, in my opinion, Marcus Ericsson this season has been actually quite good, and I think people are underrating how good he has been this season. And I know Giovinazzi only had 2 races in F1, but from what I've seen also when he was in GP2, he reminds me of Maldonado. He's very fast. I won't doubt that. He is very fast, but he is very accident prone. For a midfield team, you do not want someone who is accident prone because you're going to be spending a lot of money in new parts and, you know, repairs. And I don't think Sauber will be keen on constantly having to repair the car because Giovinazzi, despite his speed, can't keep it under control. Just look at, I think was it his last race in F1 in China in 2017? Didn't he crash twice in qualifying and the race, I think? You know, again, he's fast, but very, very accident prone. So I don't see him getting in the car. And if I was in charge of Sauber, I would go with Kimi Räikkönen and Marcus Ericsson. But yeah, what do you guys think of Kimi Räikkönen at Sauber? Do you think he'll be good? Do you think he can cause a surprise? What do you think of Kimi at Sauber? Gina says, Max is Maldonado. No, I wouldn't say that. I think Max, the way his season has gone, it's been kind of similar to Grosjean in 2012. In terms of, you know, Grosjean in 2012, he had the speed. It was clear to see that. He was very good in qualifying, and once he got it all hooked up and didn't make any mistakes, he was very, very good, but was very accident prone when it came to close racing. But it only lasted, what, a few months? And it was the same with Max Verstappen. But once they learnt from a big accident like Verstappen at Monaco and Grosjean at Spa in 2012, they calmed it down and became better drivers for it. So, yeah, I know you were joking, but still, the point has to be made. I don't see Kimi on podium in that Sauber. I think Kimi likes the challenge in developing a lower midfield car. And that's another thing. Kimi is going to give a lot of valuable experience to that team. That Sauber team, you know, they do have a lot of people in that team that have been around for a long time, but it's still kind of a new team because, of course, Alfa Romeo coming on board at the start of 2018. There are some new people at Sauber, so he will give some great experience to develop the car for 2019 and 2020. Simon Cragland, it is a scoop for Sauber. Kimi is very good to give feedback, and he's so quick to get a feel of the car. He is probably the best driver on the grid in terms of giving feedback. Yeah, he probably is. He probably is on the grid right now, I'd say so. Definitely. Stella, Kimi can make the car very quick, and I see a Schumacher happening where Kimi controls everything with his car. I'm not sure what you're trying to say, but okay. John, he will podium. It's what he does. It would be great if he got a podium in a Sauber. That would just be a classic Kimi Räikkönen moment. JB, will Kimi get a podium and Ricciardo get a podium with Sauber and Renault? Ricciardo is way more likely to get a podium than Kimi, because for one, I think Ricciardo is better than Kimi Räikkönen, and the Renault should next season be at least 3/4 of a second faster than the Sauber. It really should be. So I'd be surprised if Kimi got a podium, and if he did ahead of Ricciardo, that'd be a very surprising thing to see. Gina, I will say one thing. Sauber with Kimi will be a solid midfield team. Believe me, I think so as well. I think they'll be kind of like Force India have been this season. Say on half the races, or maybe 70% of the races, at least challenging or in the points, and then some of the races not doing so well. But I think he'll do well. I really do think he will do well. Another thing we need to move on to, though, is a new story that has come out in the last couple of days, and it's an interesting thing, I think, to show you guys. This is the 2021 car concept. This is what Liberty Media are now promoting to people this week as what they want for the future of F1. And, well, it does look interesting. It really does look interesting. And, well, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of these two cars? They've got some interesting details on them. I'm not going to get, deep into those details right now, but it definitely looks a lot different. And this is only, what, 3 to 5 years from now. 3 to 5 years from now, and it looks quite a bit different. So Liberty are planning some quite wholesale changes. And another thing I have noticed is the wheelbase is shorter. That's what they're going for, I think, for the future of F1. They're going to make the car shorter, as Niblo said in my last podcast, or one of my last podcasts, one of the last two. He said that, and it looks as though that is what Liberty is going for. But guys, what do you think of this concept? It doesn't mean this is going to happen, but this is just what Liberty want for the short-term future of F1. What do you guys think? I don't like the front wing, but still looks cool. The front wing is interesting. Yeah, I don't like it as well. Maybe we'll get used to it. I don't know. But I want to hear and see more about what these cars are supposed to be from Liberty, because it's, you know, it's all well and good seeing the cars, but we don't know what Liberty thinks these cars are going to be able to do. Will they be able to follow really well? Will they be able to be simple enough for people to understand? We'll have to see. It doesn't look like an F1 car, but it's cool, and it should improve wheel-to-wheel racing. That's from Simon Cragland. One of the pictures I've seen does kind of look like a Formula E car. I think it might have been the Mercedes. It does kind of look like a Formula E car. I think they're kind of inspired by that that series in terms of the way the aero looks. So maybe they're ripping that off, kind of. I don't know. But yeah, it's just very interesting to see this picture. Very interesting to see indeed. Stella says 8 out of 10 for the new cars. The front wing looks very bad in my opinion. It's not the greatest front wing in the world, is it? It's not great. It looks quite I don't really know how to describe it. It doesn't really look that good. But if it gives us great wheel-to-wheel racing, I don't care how the cars look. I don't care if we go back to the 2014 noses and the racing is better. I don't care. JB, I've never seen Formula E. Is it any good? Neither have I. I've never seen Formula E, so I can't comment on that. I've never seen a race. Yeah, that picture, I've seen it. It's very funny you say that. It is. Let's hope it's not 100% electric. That's from Gina. Jean Todt has talked about Formula 1 possibly going electric, but he has said that if Formula 1 does go electric, I think this is what he said, that if F1 does go electric, it won't be for quite a long time. So don't worry, it's still going to be for quite a while hybrid power, not electric power. Simon Cragland, hopefully the front wings look better in 2021 than in 2012. I will say though, with the video I made, by the way, if you haven't checked out, I did part 1 of my classic F1 seasons series on 2012. Go check that out, it's on the channel. I didn't think the front wings looked that bad in 2012. Especially on the McLaren, I thought it actually looked quite good. The step noses weren't the best front wings I've ever seen, but they didn't look that bad. Just looking for some more comments about these new 2021 cars. Simon Cragland, but I would say we have had many good races in 2017 and 2018, even though it's pretty difficult to overtake. We have, that's a good point, we have, but imagine those races, imagine the cars having better aero to follow each other. We could have had all these great races on a usual basis, not just 1 in 3 or 1 in 4. 2018's definitely been more exciting than 2017, but there has been some races like Spa, Canada, Monaco, Spain, Australia, France, which have been quite just boring. And if the cars were easier to follow, maybe a race like we got at Monza would have been at least what we got at every single race. Imagine that. And hopefully the new 2019 regulations solve that. They really need to, because the racing does need to improve. But guys, I think I'm now going to cut the stream off here. I've been on live almost an hour now. But this is, guys, my upcoming videos. These are the next 2 videos for my Singapore Grand Prix weekend schedule. Saturday, come back and don't forget to join me for the qualifying watch along at 1 PM UK time live. Come back here live, 1 PM, and we will watch qualifying along together. I'm going to be streaming for about 2.5 hours on Saturday from 1 PM till 3:30. So again, hopefully you guys can join me for that. And don't forget to check out my Singapore Grand Prix qualifying review between 8 PM and 11 PM UK time on Saturday evening. That is what is coming up tomorrow for the Singapore Grand Prix weekend. But guys, thank you guys for coming along. It's been great as usual. As well, don't forget to subscribe to this channel either on the bottom right of the screen. Click on my channel name or click on the link in the description. Like this video. Comment down below what you thought of practice and what you thought of the news that Charles Leclerc's going to Ferrari, of Kimi Raikkonen going to Sauber, and the new 2021 concept cars. And as well, don't forget to join my Discord server. There's a link below down in the description. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter to keep up to date with the channel and when I'm uploading. And if there are any issues, then follow me on Twitter, because that's the best place to keep up to date with me and what I am doing. Don't forget to check out my website as well. That's in the description down below as well. But guys, until 1 PM tomorrow, live for the qualifying watch along, I will see all of you then.